Hello and welcome to July Coaching and Debrief. This is the chance that you have each month to ask me a question directly. I answer every question I receive. And this is a chance to ask questions in particular about our learning for each month, the alchemical work that we're doing. So I'm going to dive right in. I want to thank you for all your questions. As always, they were fantastic. And I'm going to begin with Millie. She says, I've been seeing a lot of manifestation tied to materialism, to things. Yes, we all deserve nice things, but to me it's starting to feel superficial. Luxury cars, homes, more. How can we keep in check this human need for more and be satisfied with what we have while pursuing our dreams? That's a great question. I agree with you. If you notice, when I talk about manifestation, I try to talk about abundance of and other things, right? Like abundance of time or abundance of health or abundance of peace, because I think that being prosperous doesn't just mean you have a lot of things. And in fact, sometimes having a lot of things can make it difficult to experience peace, right? So I think we can try to expand our definition, I guess is my answer to you about this. I try to teach people about manifestation. I do feel I'm ultimately only responsible for my own, so I would say the best thing you can do personally is to make sure that you're focusing, right? I try not to worry too much about what other people are doing, just because, like, if I do that, I can become consumed, by just, seeing things. And sometimes people need a bigger house, for example, for a reason. Like, they're trying to manifest that because their kids are moving back in after, being away, or, their older parents are selling their house and going to be moving in with them. I've just learned that, like, sometimes what can appear to me as materialistic is actually somebody needing something for a purpose that maybe I'm not aware of too. So I try to always hold both sides of that. But I think it's very human to want to accumulate things, and then I think at a certain point, and I know, and I feel like I'm there, but you who are listening may or may not be there. It's like I look around and I'm like, I'm not taking any of this with me, you know what I mean? So like, and I think when you get to that point, you start to focus on manifestation in a different way. And I think you become more discerning about what you gather and why you're gathering it. And then I think ultimately that's the phase two, when you move into a mindset of, how can I seek manifestation in a way that blesses the collective. So I hope that's helpful. Alexandra Goodwin said, I did the secret fire meditation and holy shit, that was something. I'm so glad, Alexandra. She said, would you recommend this energy for pain relief? Oh, 3,000%. I mean, on any level, right? Because that's a really powerful meditation for moving energy. You experienced it, obviously, right? So I don't have to tell you that, but of course. And please report back. I love this stuff, right? This is, if you've been a teacher, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been a teacher before, it's, it might be good for you to know, like, just teachers love nothing more than hearing their students experience something positive with their teaching. And so, I love hearing how you're working with the tools that I give you, which includes the meditations. Kathleen Sturdivant said, hi there, I would like to know where I can go to do a healing ayahuasca ceremony. I would also love a reading if I could get over on the live feed. And so thank you for that, Kathleen. Really appreciate your kind words. And I'll be looking for you. Here's the thing with ayahuasca, Kathleen. It's a regulated, controlled Schedule 1 substance, and so it's not legal, right? So, like, I have someone I work with, but I can't refer people to him. And that's really to protect him. And I actually haven't worked in October. It'll be 2 years since I've sat with the medicine. And that's really a pandemic situation. So, in any case, what I will tell you is, what a lot of people have told me is they're finding it through Instagram by following accounts that are practitioners or people who hold ayahuasca ceremony, and then kind of, following the breadcrumbs to locate where those people are. Make sure that you talk to someone who's actually worked with that shaman or group before you do ayahuasca, though. Everybody does it differently, and I've heard great things and I've heard not great things, and I trust word of mouth and references, So I would just say really make sure that you're going to someone who has a good reputation for how they work with the medicine, how they're going to take care of you. I'm somebody who really likes to have support, meaning somebody pretty close by all the time. Some people don't want that. They don't want anybody around them. I'm not that way. I really like to have somebody there to process with me, to be present with me, and that's why I work with the person I work with, because he's very attentive and it's one-on-one. Some people really like being in a big group and kind of getting lost in the group space too, because they don't want to be attended. So think too about how you might want to experience it, and that will help guide your choices. I think about ayahuasqueros and people who will be able to hold ceremony for you. Okay. Now we're diving in with Elise Amethyst, who says, honestly, I'm not sure if this is a question, but here goes. I love that anyway. She said, I'm looking to address the work we've been doing in both June and July. As we came to mid-June, I had a major, life meltdown where I literally couldn't function in 3D. I was feeling pressure to perform in a certain way from outside sources. She said, all I wanted to do was hide away and throw the technology away. I think we've all been there. And she said, this also came on the heels of turning 40 June 16th. I recently watched your astrology YouTubes, and I feel like things make a little more sense. But I think my question is, how do I examine the role I'm playing in all of this? Is this me breaking it all apart to really examine the pieces worth keeping? How do I hold myself accountable for my reactions and look further into the future? It's a beautiful question. I love the way you put it, because I think you're probably touching on something that feels relevant for a lot of us. Whether you're in an alchemy class or not, and really hear me on this, you guys, even if you're not Elise and this wasn't your question. And by the way, a lot of people write to me and tell me that this audio is their favorite part of Soul Shift. So I'm planning to continue it next year, unless you tell me you don't want it, or I don't know. But so I say listen to me, even though I know there are quite a few of you listening. You're not just doing alchemy because you're in an alchemy class. You're aware of it because you're in an alchemy class. Okay? We all burn things down to transform them. Whether we do it consciously or not is a different question, right? For a long time in my life, I was doing alchemy and it was not conscious, at least, right? So I was burning shit down. I didn't know really what I was doing. I mean, I was alchemizing. I was breaking things down, breaking ideas down, breaking structures down, breaking relationships down, burning relationships down, right? In order to purify them and watch them rise from a newer, cleaner place. And I believe that alchemy can save a marriage. I believe that alchemy can save a life. I believe that alchemy can save sanity, can preserve health. I'm a big believer in whether you want to use whatever metaphor you want to use, burning it down to rebuild it, or, ripping off the Band-Aids so the sunlight can touch the wound. Like, I'm a big fan of acknowledging things, clearing things out, making space for clarity and healing. And the reality is, the reason why you're asking this, in my opinion, is you're wondering if this is, basically just the class, right? Or would this be happening anyway? And then what's your role in all of it? And it's like, your role is you are in an iterative cycle, a repeating cycle of transformation, because you're human. What happens when you take a class is you become aware of that iterative cycle. And awareness is a powerful thing, because then you start becoming aware of the awareness. Like, oh, this is what I'm doing, right? Why am I doing it? How am I doing it? Is there a different way to do it? Does it have to look like this? Just because it's always looked like X doesn't mean it always has to look like X. It can look like Y, So you start to take control of the process and your awareness of the process. The process is going to continue to happen, but how the process happens and what kind of havoc it wreaks or doesn't wreak on your life, when you come into awareness around it, that really shifts and transforms. And then your partner becomes aware too, like, wait, are we alchemizing right now? You know what I mean? in my opinion, it's very hard to do this 3D thing right now without alchemy, because the whole planet's alchemizing. And so we're becoming aware in this class about our own alchemical patterns, but then I think we're also becoming aware of the more global, extensive, planetary, human alchemical patterns, right? Because I don't know anybody who's not alchemizing right now. And I'm not exaggerating. I literally don't know anybody who's not alchemizing something right now. And a lot of people are alchemizing multiple things, right? I have friends who are going through divorces, and family members are battling COVID, and it's just like changing jobs, and it's usually any one of those things would be an alchemy, but you can be alchemizing all these things at once. And then sometimes the alchemy is the fact that there's multiple things happening at once, right? So everything goes in the furnace for that original calcination. Everything has to be placed together in the furnace to be able to see, okay, so what's valuable here? And I think alchemy teaches you too not to judge things as you initially perceive them either. I do use COVID as an example a lot because COVID fucking sucks, and I wish it didn't happen, but I also think it's going to transform how we relate to each other, how we work, how we communicate, how we do business, how we and it looks like a big mess right now, but magic in progress always does. I mean, when you're remodeling your house, in the middle of it looks like a big shithole, right? But it's on its way to looking better, right? I'm not remodeling my house, but I'm tearing up the grass in my backyard little by little, because it's not really grass. It's like weeds that looks like grass, kind of. It's crabgrass. So, my landscaper is also my friend, and I had him come over, and he's like, Athena, unless I dig up all this stuff and then like burn the ground literally and leave it for a few weeks with weed killer and stuff, there's no sense in planting new grass, because then you're just going to end up with crabgrass again in 2 years, and you'll have wasted all that time and money and whatever else. So little by little, he's alchemizing my backyard. Like, it just teaches you to look at things in a different way, is I guess what I'm saying. So I don't think you have to hold yourself accountable. I think there's this idea, and I'm not in any way judging you, by the way, because I do the same thing, and I don't think it's wrong. I think it's human, but we have this human like tendency that if we're not working for it, if we're not accountable, if we're not, then we're not doing the thing or whatever. And it's like, you're doing the thing. You're, by virtue of going through the process, you're accountable. And I'll tell you something, the real accountability is awareness. So the fact that you're even asking me this question tells me you are entirely accountable, and you're actually poised to really maximize the benefit of this transformation. I want you guys to stop sometimes and pat yourselves on the back just a little bit and go, holy shit, most people don't even know this shit is happening. Right? You guys are having, Elise Amethyst is having an awareness of her awareness. Do you know how sophisticated that is? And if you don't, can we talk about how sophisticated that is? 95% of the people in my life can't do that. They can't even see what you've articulated here. So you're already, 3/4 of the way there, right? So instead of asking yourself, how do I work harder here? Or should I work, it's like, no, I mean, your job now is to stay in that place of witnessing, without judgment, what's happening. And stay active and stay awake and keep in dialogue with us, with yourself, right? With your spirit guides. But even the question you're asking tells me you're exactly on the right track. And by the way, the 40s are great. I mean, I'm finishing mine, right? I'm turning 48 on Monday. And, so I'm like 80% of the way through, and it's been great. I much prefer it to my 30s. I feel like I was like an infant in my 30s compared to now, and I'll probably feel even more like that when I'm at the end of my 50s. I'll probably look back and go, God, Athena. By the time I got to 40, I was tired because, a lot had happened. Anyway, thank you for the question. Gloria Sanchez says, I had some difficult days about a month ago when I started discovering and then facing all my fears one by one. I'm beginning to feel two things. There are things in my life that do not serve anymore, and I'm beginning to laugh and enjoy life more, even if I know it will take time to fully confront and overcome my post-trauma fears. Even my kids were laughing the other day, seeing my profile pictures are sometimes silly with sentences like love who you are written all over my face and how did I not care what the rest of the world thinks. I think I'm freeing myself from so many blockages. Still lots of work to do. I would love a reading since I'm always working at that time. I can't wait to keep learning in Soul Shift and so ready to learn about perfumes. Happy anniversary. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay. I'm starting to think maybe it'd be nicer to do readings at the end of class on Wednesdays from 6 to 7. It wouldn't bother me. I just don't know collectively. Just because a lot more of you would be able to attend. So I'll have to think on that, and it would have to be sort of a collective conversation. But yeah, I mean, this is the whole goal, right? Is to get to this point where you're letting go of your fear. And she said, she's letting go of what isn't serving her, and then she's also laughing and enjoying life more. I mean, if we can really get to a place, and this is intuitively what's coming to me for you right now, so I guess this is kind of a reading, is mindfulness is the key. And and a lot of us like even tune that out because we're like, oh, mindfulness, right? What happens in the English language, I can tell you this as a linguist, is when we hear a word too much, we stop paying attention to it. It's like we check out. Words, when they're overused, can become somewhat kind of meaningless. And that's happened, I think, with the word mindfulness. Like, oh, mindfulness and mindfulness. Like, we don't even pay attention to it anymore. But what mindfulness is just actually being fully inhabiting this present moment as if there are no other possibilities. And so, my favorite example is when you're laying in bed at night and you're all anxious and thinking about a ton of different things. And then you stop and go, what if I could only think about being in this bed? And all of a sudden you fall asleep, right? It's like, if you take all the other options off the table except this moment, it becomes much easier to find joy. I was watching this woman who was on America's Got Talent, and she is going through her own battle with illness, but she said, and it was really poignant, she said, you have to, how did she put it? You can't wait until life gets easier to decide to be happy. I think a lot of us do that. We postpone joy. Like, I'll be happy when, and it's like, is it really going to get easier? When your kids are young, you say, oh, when the kids are older, all X, Y, and Z. And they get older and you're like, well, now I'm too tired. It's like, we have to be careful not to defer joy. And a lot of times we defer joy because we prioritize fear and anxiety. And fear and anxiety and regret are always signs to me that the person is not in the present moment. So I think you're really onto something. Morgan says, hello, darling. Hello to you. My question is, in Australia, we've been in the depths of winter. It's been cold and dark for so long, 5 long COVID lockdowns. How do all these factors impact our magical work? Such a great question. Morgan says, I feel like I've been in a hibernation and I've felt myself shrugging away from community and my practice for some time now. I want to know if that's normal, and how do you get out of this funk? On the one hand, Morgan, like, this is why we're here, and this is why we have the tools that we have. Because it's my firm belief that if you're alive right now, you chose this particular timeline, and the question then becomes why, and I can't answer that for you. In fact, I'm sometimes unable to answer that question for myself. But I rest in assurance, because of that reality, that I probably have the skills I need to navigate this particular timeline, right? Whether I'm consciously aware of that or not, and whether I'm aware of what those skills actually have to be. I mean, I don't know what's going to be needed 5 or 10 years from now. such a different world today than it was even 2 or 3 years ago, because of the acceleration. And so I'm just trusting that I'm going to know. And I think that that's my answer to you as well. I think a couple of things I want to say to you in response to your question. First of all, a lot of us who are very senior in our practice have noticed, as I have odd networks that I'm in, as you might imagine, and some of them are networks of practitioners. One in particular, I'm the youngest person in there, so these are wizards and priestesses in their 50s and 60s, and so I'm privy to some of those conversations. And what a lot of them say is they get to a point in their practice where their practice becomes just about the practice, where it isn't about like where they don't actually do ceremonies, they don't work with tools, they don't the practice becomes the practice of life, and their practice becomes showing up to life, and so that's one way of looking at this time too, is it's like maybe you don't need as much right now. Maybe you're navigating this time without needing as much of a practice. Maybe the practice is the practice. Maybe life is the practice, is I guess what I'm saying. And then I think the next piece is, and this is kind of a bigger topic, so I won't go too far into it today, but if you guys are keen, I can always come back to this. But I think we as humans at some point have to, reconcile our feelings about death, and that's really what the COVID energetics is surfacing for us. Is we're like a live for today kind of, we've got time society, but we are human. And so I think if we can, the people I know who are navigating COVID the best seem to be the people who are like, I'm human, I'm mortal, like at some point I won't be here anymore, and so on this dimensional plane, so I'm just here to serve and learn and make beautiful things, and in whatever way that looks like, right? Make beautiful humans, or make beautiful flower arrangements, or make beautiful whatever it is you do, right? And I'm here to learn and evolve so I can move forward on my soul's bigger spiritual path that I think it's on. And I think once we reconcile all of that, then a lot of the external stuff becomes less concerning, and we can come back home. I mean, essentially, that allows us to come back to a sense of purpose. I'm here to do this, whatever's in front of me, and I trust that I'm here to do this because I have the skills and the capacities and mindset and gifts that I need to navigate this in a good way. So I think coming out of the funk is like seeing the funk for what it is, that there's joy anyway. I was watching the news today. I watch a lot of international news because I find I get a better perspective. And the international news today is really focused on Afghanistan and what's happening there, and it's with Taliban control and stuff. And I was thinking to myself as I was watching this, like, if you're in Kandahar, or you're in one of these major areas or provinces in Afghanistan, your first concern isn't COVID. Your first concern is the immediate circumstances that are happening there, like right this minute. And so in any moment, we can choose to put our focus where it needs to be or where we want it to be, right? So part of getting out of the funk is recognizing it's a funk, and then being deliberate with where and how you're going to place your energy. And really trying to make each moment count, you know what I mean? Like, because it's precious, and there's something good that we can do in every moment. And I also find that the more I focus on other people, the less of a funk I'm in. I get really funked out when I'm focused on me. That might sound strange, but the more I focus on me and my problems and how I feel and what's going on and my community and my like real like me centric, I get very depressed and discouraged. The minute I kind of helicopter up or expand out and open the aperture a little bit, it's like, okay. There's comfort in remembering how small we are. I find comfort there. And that's why I love travel. It's why COVID's been hard for me, because my medicine is travel. It's like, as soon as I'm in that airplane and I'm hovering over some other city, it's like, oh yeah, everything I just left is really small, you know? And it allows me to put things in perspective. So whatever your way is of putting things in perspective, I really encourage you to do that on like a daily basis right now, because perspective is a healer. And perspective can help you stay here and stay present, but also be aware that here and present isn't everything, and it's quite small and absolutely transient, you know? I hope all of that makes sense, and more than making sense, I hope it's helpful for you. Thank you, Morgan. Chrissy Whistler says, can you speak more to reclaiming desire, to embodying desire, even when we might be in the midst of survival mode? I've had quite the challenging parenting experience with my kids when they were young, as they came into this world. I often found myself alone, especially when they were little, and it was really hard in those moments. I've had to relearn to trust myself, my intuition, right? Yes, there were periods of calm, but it always felt like as soon as I regained my footing, could start thinking of myself again, we go into another cycle and I was back in survival mode, and follow all of that with a pandemic and lockdowns and worrying about jobs and money, and then grief and joy with her grandmother, right? She said, desire has felt like this almost push-pull kind of energy. One moment I'm ready to go and leap, and then the next minute something happens, it pulls it back, it's put on hold. And she says, I understand divine timing, and while I'm leaning to trust it more and more, at times these moments can be incredibly uncomfortable, sometimes even painful. I have these deep desires to go over here and do this thing and follow my dreams, and yet I have moments of being in this world and being a mom of kids who are different, and being in a world where money and financial freedom is necessary. I'm trying to walk this path and find the balance in where I'm at on my soul's journey and what's being asked of me. And to be more comfortable and centered when I'm in this liminal space. How to embody desire while still tap dancing on survival mode in this world. And thank you for your question and your kind words too, Chrissy. You know, what Spirit's asking me to tell you, Chrissy, is to go to your major arcana, to go to your Rider-Waite deck and look at the High Priestess card. She sits between the two pillars, right? And those are the pillars of yin and yang, of light and shadow, of sun and moon. This middle path, this limina, this liminal space that a lot of us inhabit is a gift, and it's a challenge at the same time, because we're very rarely in yes or no. We're always kind of in maybe. And it can make you feel like there's somewhere you're supposed to get to, and it can make you feel frustrated, like eventually I'm supposed to be like just in my desires, right? And what I've learned, for what it's worth, is, you know, because my kids and your kids are different, but you know, I have concerns with my kids, in particular my daughter, that most parents don't have, so it's been more challenging. For me, what I've had to realize is, if I want to experience something, I have to consciously integrate it. There's not going to be a time where I just get to be kind of like, you know, just about my physical sexual desire, or just about my job, or just about my family, or whatever. It's like, again, I go back to alchemy, right? Like, it's all in my cauldron. Now I can choose to focus sometimes in one area or another, but the reason I'm kind of leaning in this direction with you is, from my perspective, when I make space for desire, for example, I feel like I show up as a better parent, because when my cup is a little full, I've got more to give to them. So I've learned that part of being a good parent is making space for those things, because the universe is never going to stop and go, all right, Athena, I mean, here's your 7 days to go and, just focus on belly dance and shaking your booty and swinging on a pole and, just having sex for 4 days or something, like, because you were talking about sexual desire. And it's like, no, but I can be little bits of that in the rest of my life. And when I attend to myself and I prioritize my desire or my pleasure or my happiness or whatever, it's very rare for me to be able to do that for any extended period of time at all. But if I do little bits of it, then the rest of my life seems to benefit from it. And so that can look as simple as, like, running through your life, but putting on cute lingerie under your clothes and knowing that you've got it there, right? Or putting on your perfume before you leave the house when you normally don't because you're too busy, or taking a really long, luxurious bath with the half an hour that you can find, right? When somebody's over and playing with your kids or helping you out, or they're watching a movie and you're in the next room. Like, that's what I still do, is steal those moments. And I find that if I do that, now the key is, if you're gonna do it this way and integrate it, then when you're in those moments, you got to be really in those moments. You can't still be thinking about everything you have to be doing when you're trying to have self-time, right? So I think it's really important to be able to kind of pull the plug on everything else and just mentally, right, be present, because otherwise you're not really getting the benefit of that, and then the benefit doesn't come back to the rest of your life. Balance, be careful with balance as a goal. I'm imbalanced. When I stopped holding up balance as a goal, I felt like I was free. Nature's not even in balance, right? I tell you this all the time. Nature's only in balance twice a year at the equinoxes, right? When day and night are equal. But the rest of the year, it's either too much light or too much shadow. So if nature can't do it, I can't do it. And you probably can't either, right? My goal is alignment. And that doesn't look like balance, because alignment is completely unique to the moment, to the person. And I just want to be in alignment with the highest possible frequency I can emit in any given moment. I hope that's helpful for you. Stephanie says, thank you for your insight. You're so welcome. She says, what are your thoughts on creating agreements for a partnership or a relationship? My idea is like a contract with your beloved to set you both up for success. I've already made a list of things I would like to agree upon. I would, of course, be open to negotiations and resolutions to things which break the agreements. How would you go about having this type of conversation, and when would it be appropriate? A fascinating question. I do think we all came in with agreements, right? I'm not talking about what you're talking about. I'm talking about like soul contracts. I think we all came in to say, okay, you and I will come in on this timeline. We'll meet at this year because I need to do these things before I meet you. And then I'll help you do this for X amount of time. And then we call that a divorce or whatever, right? Or I'll do this with you forever or whatever it is. So I think you're already on a contract. Now, what you're talking about is a more conscious human contract about, I assume, like behaviors and expectations and things like that. My bigger question to you is, what is it that you're needing that you aren't currently receiving that's leading you to this desire? I've been with my partner for 20 years. We've been married 18 of those. And the biggest changes I've seen in our relationship, where he has evolved and met me, have been in the years where I really was doing deep, intentional, energetic work and really focusing on my own intentions. And I think ultimately it was his desire to be in alignment with me that allowed us to continue to grow together versus growing apart. Everybody grows, but not everybody grows together. So I find that I think I probably do have expectations of my partnership, but they're energetic. and we wouldn't be able to be together if he wasn't aligning to them in some way, like, because there's just some non-negotiables for me, right? Like, I'm sovereign. My opinions and my feelings matter. I take up my space. You know what I mean? Like, and I expect to be met with respect. Like, I have certain non-negotiables, but they're not articulated. So my question to you, which you're welcome to kind of come back to me in the next month's questions and we can continue the dialogue, is, are you wanting this because you feel like energetically it's not happening? So now you want something material and concrete and, right, articulated? And if so, is your partner, like, how will your partner respond to this too? Like, certain astrological positions and alignments would be very open to this, and certain ones would be resistant to this. So, because as a coach, what I do, and what I used to do forever when I was a coach, is I always used to ask people, what is success? Because they would want to focus on how they're going to get somewhere, and I didn't want to focus on that, because the how doesn't matter if your end goal isn't actually the end goal. Like, so they would like say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and that's going to get me to, and I would say, that's going to get you where? Like, what is our destination? And they would say, well, the destination is this. And I would look back and say, well, but that's not how you get to that. But people focus on the steps. They don't focus on the goal. And it's like, so the goal is this. Like, people will say, well, I'm starting a new, diet, and I'm going to do keto, and I'm going to, because, I've heard that keto, and then I'll say, so what's your goal? And they'll say, my goal is to, feel healthier and lose 5 pounds. And it's like, and then we get underneath it. It's like, maybe that's not the right approach, right? But they start in with, I'm going to start doing this thing. And it's like, okay, but let's figure out what the destination is. And then let's map backward to figure out, okay, is that the right course of action to get where you're trying to go? And as a coach, I used to do that because I would ask people to define success, because I wanted to know what success looked like. Like, if I'm a good coach to you, how will you know? And they would say, well, sometimes I don't know. I would say, well, if you don't know, then how am I going to know? I mean, now we're both fucked, right? Like, let's set ourselves up for success. So I hope some of this is helpful for you. Shalonda Robinson said, I wanted to know, is July 25th and 26th the end of a cosmic cycle and the start of a new galactic year? If not, when is the new galactic year? I tend not to think in galactic years. The new years that I recognize, Shalonda, and there might be other people in the group who have a different perspective. Because for me, July 25, 26 is important, because that's the beginning of the alignment between Sirius and the Earth for the Lion's Gate, right? So you might be thinking of that. I observe the new year that we all observe on December 31st because, I'm part of the collective awareness, and that's what's happening on this planet. But then I also observe Samhain, which is the third harvest on October 31st. I observe that as the end of the year too, which is the end of the year in the Celtic timeline. So that's my best thinking on galactic years. I hope that's helpful. Elita John says, so if I was born on retrogrades of Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, all in Capricorn, do I have an advantage on reclaiming my destiny and freedom and dreams, or is it harder to do that? Also, why is direct so different from other planets which don't have R or D next to them? That's a great question. So remember that Saturn and Uranus and Neptune are all retrograde for about 5 months a year. So lots of people are born with your exact profile. So I wouldn't say it's an advantage over other people. Everything in your chart it's what you need for this lifetime, right? It's a snapshot of the sky as you were at the time you were born. Retrograde planets always mean we're meant to reclaim and redefine those things symbolically on our own, right? So Saturn retrograde is the opportunity to redefine the rules you live by and find your own authority. So I hope that's helpful in terms of thinking about it a little bit more broadly. And And one thing that Tara, who's the astrologer on our team at Sage Goddess, mentioned too, that might be helpful for you, is she says the symbols in the chart might differ based on the astrological software. But RX in red is typically how most of the software indicates retrograde. Direct planets don't typically have a symbol for direct next to them. So hopefully that's helpful too. Carrie Lucero says, I'd like to say happy anniversary. Thank you so much. And she said, this year for me has been difficult. I've faced my fears, felt all the things. Letting go of pain from decades of trauma feels good. But I'm wondering, as it seems the releasing seems to be ongoing. You said this is the last month for releasing. Although I feel so much more to push through, to cleanse, and to free. Can we release all year? Oh, Carrie, 3,000%. And I do want to say it again, just to say it honestly. Alchemy is cyclical. It is not linear, right? We don't go, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 through the process, and then you're done and you graduate and you get a certificate and you never have to alchemize anything ever again. It's cyclical. So we go through the first 2 phases and then we go back, and then we go to the next 2 phases after that and we go back 1, and then we go ahead 1, and then we come back 2, right? It's because we're human. My shaman that I do ayahuasca with talks about this a lot. He calls himself Roto-Rooter, and he's like, I always have to come back because you keep living, like you keep encountering shitty people and you keep having tough, experiences, and you keep taking on other people's energy. And so I got to come back and, clean that off. And he calls them barnacles, right? Like, as long as you're alive, you're going to have alchemical work to do. So now here's the thing, as your teacher, I got to put this in some kind of structure that makes some sense. So I have to give you A and B and C and D and E, and I got to keep the train moving, and I got to keep it linear, right? But in terms of the execution of the work, in terms of the activation of the work and the actual experience of the work, it's highly cyclical. So thank you, Carrie, for the question, because it gave me an opportunity to clarify that for someone who may not have heard it before, And that's a critical piece of the puzzle. Sarah Briner says, still working through sacral chakra trauma. When I listened to Crystal Masters this month, it really opened my eyes. I've had 2 miscarriages, a C-section, hysterectomy. I battled depression and lack of drive and all the things, right? She said, I can't let go of some of the weight that should be dropping off with this program. Class was a huge wake-up call and a light bulb. I'm implementing your teachings and using the tools. Looking for more specific guidance of your suggestion on the incorporation of all of these into a daily ritual. The lack of drive and focus makes it hard to stick with it. What would be your order of activities to make this flow? More clearly, start with breath and mala. Where do I use sound in order with the wah-wah tube? How long would you use the sound tube in a sitting? I only have 2 hands. Just cutie pie. Sarah says, I'm a Virgo and I need specific instructions. God bless you for that. Number 1, my best weight loss advice, because this is a question that I'm asked all the time, I do believe in taking, fermented foods are really, really important because they help to break down stored fat in the body. And apple cider vinegar has something in it called malic acid, and malic acid breaks up stored fat, like stored fat from when you were a teenager and when your fat cells were developing, right? So I take an ounce of apple cider vinegar a day with water. I drink the juice of 1 lemon a day, in water. And that has helped me maintain my weight. And so that's one thing I do recommend that you do. Sometimes it will also help to suppress your appetite. I also believe in intermittent fasting. So I try to keep all of my eating in an 8-hour period, which means my body goes 16 hours without food. It doesn't bother me. Sometimes I get snacky in the evening, and so I try to make sure I'm eating something healthy when I'm snacking in the evening. So I take breakfast around 8 a.m. I usually have lunch between 1 to 2 p.m. and then and that's my main meal, and then I'll have something healthy as a snack, or if I'm not hungry, I will wait to eat till the next day. Now there are certain people with certain health conditions who can't follow a protocol like that, but I still think you can make healthy choices. I try to minimize the amount of meat in my diet and prioritize vegetables. I also find that weight loss is easier when I don't eat dairy. So those are my dietary suggestions for you. In terms of a sort of routine, wake up in the morning. My first thing is to set my mindset for the day, which means I focus on gratitude. I try to look out that window and just say, thank you for this day, right? Thank you for the blessings in my life. And I like to smudge first thing in the morning. I like copal in the morning. It sets sacred space. I do use sound every single day, whether it's playing a solfeggio frequency or working with my singing bowls or the chimes. I find that sound for me is best either in the morning or in the evening. Sound in the evening is a lot of magic. And all you have to do is light some incense and play. I mean, any of your sound tools, I'm not talking about, an hour of a sound bath or whatever. I'm talking about literally just playing the tube and moving it through your energy field. It might take 10 seconds. Or drumming for 5 minutes to one of the tracks on my SoundCloud playlist. I have a drum circle playlist on there with some good tracks that you can drum to if you want to do that, which I highly recommend. It's a great way to learn how to drum by drumming along to a song that's got a good bass track, a good bass line. So I tried to give you some good suggestions there. And so if you're a Virgo, hopefully, those are some pretty specific. The healthiest protocol for me is, and again, this is just me, so if this doesn't sound good to you or, you don't want to do it, it's okay. What works best for me is to wake up in the morning, take my apple cider vinegar, my lemon water, and then for breakfast to either have, I like this yogurt called Siggy's. It's low carb, high protein, low calorie. Or I like to have half an avocado with, I really love Trader Joe's. It's called Everything But the Bagel seasoning. Or I have an egg, just one. And if you want some fiber, some nice whole grain bread, like a good Ezekiel bread is good. And you can mash up your avocado if you want with some red onion and some salt, pepper, and everything but the bagel, and then do like an avocado toast. And then I like to wait until lunch. I'm a big fan of salads. And you can make a quick dressing with olive oil and some balsamic vinegar or some white wine vinegar, if you prefer, with some Dijon mustard. And whisk that together. And, and you can put anything in your salad that you like or order in a salad from your favorite restaurant. And then hummus is a great snack. So if I'm still hungry around like 6 or 7, I'll have some hummus and some, I like to do carrots, but I like to do the multicolored carrots. I don't know why, but I prefer the flavor of them. Or you can do celery, which is great. Doesn't have any calories, really gives you a lot of hydration. If I do that, I can consistently lose weight with no problem. So when I deviate from that, that's when I run into problems. And I'm finding that as I'm getting closer to 50, like I do have to be pretty strict. If I do a cheat day and I eat whatever I want, I gotta be back on the wagon for a couple of days now at my age. But I'm able to maintain a really healthy, good figure doing the things I just shared with you. And what I like about it is it's not extreme. It's not expensive. I mean, avocados are expensive, but, get a dozen eggs. If you don't want to cook an egg in the morning, hard boil your eggs so that you can just have one ready to go. And again, get your everything but the bagel seasoning. If you're a flavor person like me, like I need that. I also love tahini, for when I make my avocado toast. I love a little tahini on there, which is chili and lime and super, super yum. I'm a seasoning person. And my favorite balsamic vinegar is actually by Suzanne Summers. She has this balsamic, I can't remember the name of it, but she sells it on SuzanneSummers.com, and I buy it, and it's a reduction, and she has different flavors of it. I just like the original. And so that with olive oil and some good Dijon mustard, like a Maille mustard from France, which you can get on Amazon. I mean, that is like an incredible salad dressing, and some nice coarse salt and pepper. That's my recipe for success. So a lemon a day, ACV, lean proteins, and some good salads, and start making your own salad dressing, and keep your snacks light and healthy, and eat hummus. Have fun, you guys. I hope this was helpful for you too. I'll be back with you August coaching, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you for being part of my life and my world. I'm super blessed to know you and walk alongside you on this path, and love you and admire you very much. I'll see you soon.